My wife drained our bank account while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed. Her message read, "I deserve this after everything I've done for you." I stared at the words, then replied with a single thumbs up. When they discharged me the next day, I didn't bother going home. I'm Cameron Doyle, 45 years old, with 22 of them spent behind the wheel of a semi. Not exactly glamorous, but it kept the lights on, kept Dana in the comfort she never once seemed to value. That pressure in my chest had been building for weeks. I chalked it up to stress. Too many miles, too much bitter coffee, too little sleep, until one night, just outside Omaha, it got so bad I had to pull over. I called 911 myself. They flew me to a hospital in Sioux Falls. It wasn't a panic attack. My heart was giving out. I remember the doctor's face, tight with urgency, right before the world slipped away. "We're losing him," she said. Not the kind of thing you want echoing in your head as everything fades to black. 2 days later, I came to with tubes in my arms, a stent in my chest, and the distinct sense that something inside me had broken for good. The nurse said I'd flatlined twice, told me I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky, not when I opened my phone. One message from Dana, 15 years married, no kids, just a house in Sioux Falls and long, quiet dinners during the rare nights I was home. The message had a screenshot, our joint account. Balance $0, 0 cents. Below it, she'd written, "I deserve this after everything I've done for you." $61,438.72. Gone. My emergency fund, truck repairs, retirement savings, every damn penny. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel anything. Just tired. The kind of tired that sleep can't touch. I sent her a thumbs up. No words. No fight left in me. The doctor came in later and told me to rest. Said I needed to stay calm, no stress, no driving for 6 weeks. Asked if someone was picking me up the next day. Yeah. I lied. That night I called my brother Jeff. He lived across town. We hadn't talked in months. Not because of a falling out. Just different lives, different roads. "Need a favor," I said. "Name it," he replied without hesitation. "I need a place to crash for a few days. And I need you not to tell Dana." There was a pause. "She doesn't know you're alive?" Jeff asked. "Oh, she knows," I said. "She just doesn't know I'm not coming home." I'd met Dana at a gas station just outside Cheyenne. Her car had a flat, and I was the guy who stopped to help. Back then, she looked at me like I was a damn superhero just for knowing how to use a jack. Funny how fast admiration turns into expectation. We were married 6 months later. Quick, sure, but not careless. I was 30, she was 27. Old enough to know the risks. Young enough to believe love could outlast them. She never liked that I was gone 3 weeks out of every 4. But she liked what the job paid for. I called her every night, no matter where I was. Some dusty diner in Texas, a motel in Idaho. In the early days, we'd talk for an hour, then 20 minutes, then 5. Eventually, it was just text messages. Made it to Nashville. All good here. The signs had been there. She stopped asking when I'd be home. Started going on trips with friends I'd never heard of. I trusted her. That's what marriage is supposed to be, trust. Jeff helped me settle into his guest room. He's a construction foreman, local work, 2 divorces behind him. A man who knows the quiet ache of betrayal. "You should eat something," he said. I wasn't hungry. My thoughts were busy, circling the house I'd bought, the one I'd refinanced just 3 months ago when interest rates dropped. Dana had said she was swamped with work, so I handled it alone. Put the deed solely in my name, better credit score. She never even asked to see the papers. There was also the medical power of attorney I'd set up last year, after my friend Tim had a stroke. His girlfriend couldn't make decisions for him, so I got scared. My niece Megan helped with the paperwork. She's studying law, sharp as a tack. Made sure it was airtight. "Does Dana know you're here?" Jeff asked, handing me a sandwich. "No," I said. "And we're going to keep it that way." "She took everything?" I nodded. "What are you going to do?" I took a bite of the sandwich. It had no taste. "I'm going to get some rest. Doctor's orders." But that night, rest never came. I just lay there, eyes locked on the ceiling, sifting through every small moment when Dana had started slipping away. She used to check her phone under the table, changed her passwords like it was nothing, said she was moving money between accounts to get better interest rates. I've been blind, but not anymore. On my third day at Jeff's place, I got a text from our neighbor Harold. Haven't seen you around. Everything okay? Dana's got some guy over. Thought you should know. I didn't answer, just sat there, staring at the screen, letting it settle into the hollow space where trust used to live. That afternoon, Jeff drove me to the bank, but not the branch where Dana and I were known. We went downtown to the main office. I asked to speak with someone in fraud. I showed the woman the text with the screenshot, explained how I'd been hospitalized, unconscious, while the withdrawals happened, said I hadn't authorized any of it. She kept her expression calm, professional, but her eyes gave her away. There was pity there, maybe even a flicker of anger. Mr. Doyle, we can open a fraud investigation, she said carefully. But since it's a joint account, your wife had equal access. It may be difficult to. I understand. I cut in. But I'd still like to try. She nodded and began typing. We'll need documentation from the hospital, records showing your admission, especially any periods where you were incapacitated. Not a problem. And if this escalates to a criminal matter, the police may become involved. I'm aware, I said steady. On the way back, we stopped for gas. Jeff got out to pump while I stayed in the car. Through the windshield, I watched a dad and his two kids buying ice cream from the convenience store. Laughing, sticky fingers, normal life unfolding like nothing had changed. Want anything? Jeff asked through the open door. I shook my head. Back at his place, I made 3 phone calls. First to my dispatcher. I told him I'd need an extended medical leave. Then the credit union where I kept a small business account. And finally to a lawyer friend of Jeff's. I need to know where I stand, I told him. The house, the accounts, everything. His name was Blake. He agreed to meet the next day. After I hung up, I pulled out my laptop, logged into accounts Dana never knew about, checked investments she'd never once asked me about. Not because I'd hidden anything, just because she never cared enough to look. She'd never cared for the dull parts of our finances, budgets, spreadsheets, maintenance accounts. That was always my lane. While I was digging through investment records, another text came through, this time from Dana. Where are you? Your truck isn't at the depot. Did they tell you I came by? I didn't answer. A few minutes later, Cameron, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear. We need to talk about this. I set the phone face down on the table. From across the kitchen, Jeff glanced over. She reaching out? Yeah. You gonna respond? I closed my laptop. Not yet. That night, I went for a walk around Jeff's neighborhood. The sky was clear, stars peeking through even with the glow of the city. For the first time since that night outside Omaha, the tightness in my chest was gone. Not the physical pain that had faded. The other kind. I realized something on that walk. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was done. And in that quiet, there was clarity. Dana hadn't just taken my savings. She'd handed me my freedom. A week after leaving the hospital, I finally went back to the house. I timed it for midday, when I knew she'd be at work. Used my key. Walked in like I just rolled in from a haul. The air smelled off. Cologne that wasn't mine. A couple of empty wine bottles in the recycling. 2 glasses sitting clean in the dishwasher. I didn't linger, just packed a few days' worth of clothes, grabbed my documents, and the small lockbox from the closet, passport, birth certificate, the essentials. As I turned to leave, I noticed something missing from the hallway table. The framed photo from our wedding day. Back at Jeff's, Blake the lawyer spread papers across the kitchen table. The house situation is interesting, he said, flipping through the refinancing file. Since it's solely in your name and given that medical clause, plus your recent cardiac event, you've got a strong case for full possession. What about the money she took? Blake's expression darkened. That's trickier. Joint accounts usually mean joint ownership. But he tapped the bank statements. Clearing it out while you were incapacitated could qualify as financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, especially since we can show it was primarily your income funding those accounts. I nodded slowly. And if I want a divorce? South Dakota's an equitable distribution state, he said. But given everything, I think we can build a strong case in your favor. He gathered the papers into a neat stack. I'll start drafting the initial documents. In the meantime, don't contact her, Blake had said. Don't respond if she reaches out. Everything goes through me now. The next day, Dana showed up at Jeff's house. I was alone. Jeff was at work. I heard her car before I saw it, the tires crunching over the gravel. I didn't look out the window. The doorbell rang 3 times. Then came the knocking. I know you're in there, Cameron, she called out. Her voice was muffled but sharp. Your truck's parked down the street. More knocking. You can't just hide. We need to talk about this. I sat frozen on the couch, like a kid in a game of hide and seek, trying not to breathe too loud. Eventually, the noise stopped. I thought she'd given up. Then my phone buzzed. I'm sorry about the money. I was angry. You've been distant for months. I thought you were cheating. When I found out about the house refinancing, I panicked. We can work this out. Please talk to me. It was the first time she'd ever accused me of cheating. Classic projection. I turned the phone face down. Didn't respond. The next morning, Blake called. Dana's contacted me, he said. She's hired Patricia Wells. That name landed like a punch. Patricia Wells, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the state. Ruthless. Known for going after everything: homes, pensions, future income down to the last cent. What does that mean for us? I asked. It means she's not playing nice. Wells is already arguing that your silence and absence after the hospitalization amounts to desertion. She's claiming you're emotionally unstable, that you vanished without explanation and are refusing all communication. I let out a slow breath, eyes fixed on the floor. So what now? Now, Blake said. We get ahead of this. I've filed for an emergency hearing regarding the funds she took. Judge Harmon's presiding. He doesn't tolerate people exploiting medical crises. After I hung up, I sat in silence, just staring at the wall. Then I called Megan. I needed her help with something specific, something important. That evening, I drove past the house. Dana's car was in the driveway. Parked beside it was a sleek black Audi I didn't recognize. I circled the block once, didn't stop, didn't slow down, just kept driving. Back at Jeff's, I pulled into the driveway. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This is Patricia Wells. I represent Dana Doyle. Any further surveillance of my client will be documented as harassment. All communication must go through proper legal channels. They were watching me. I had been watching them, and now the gloves were off. 2 weeks after that first sit-down with Blake, we had our day in court. An emergency hearing over the missing funds. Dana showed up in a tailored suit, Patricia Wells at her side, polished and poised. I wore the only tie I owned, the one I kept in my truck for roadside funerals and worst-case scenarios. Judge Harmon presided. White hair, reading glasses low on his nose, a face carved by decades of no-nonsense justice. He flipped through our filings silently, occasionally glancing from Dana to me. Finally, he spoke. Ms. Wells, your client withdrew the entirety of the joint accounts while Mr. Doyle was hospitalized for a life-threatening cardiac event. Is that correct? Wells stood, smooth and ready. Your Honor, my client had every legal right to access those funds. Furthermore, Mr. Doyle recently refinanced the marital home solely in his name, without Mrs. Doyle's knowledge. We contend that was the initial act of financial deception. Judge Harmon slowly removed his glasses. I'm not asking about the house, counselor. I'm asking about the timing of the withdrawal. Was your client aware Mr. Doyle was hospitalized when she transferred the funds? Dana leaned in and whispered something. Wells adjusted her stance. Yes, Your Honor. But my client was under extreme emotional distress. She believed her marriage was collapsing and acted to protect herself financially. The judge put his glasses back on. An unconscious man recovering from a heart attack seems an odd time for a marital collapse, he muttered, flipping a page. Funds are to be frozen immediately. Neither party may access them until ownership is determined through divorce proceedings. It wasn't a full victory, but it was enough to stop Dana from spending another cent. As we left the courtroom, Dana tried to step toward me. Cameron, please. There's so much you don't understand. Wells caught her arm before she could get closer. I didn't stop, didn't look back. Outside, Blake was already pulling out his phone. This is just the beginning, he said. Now we move into discovery. Discovery, the part where secrets come to light. A week later, Blake called me into his office. A folder waited on the desk. We've got something, he said, sliding it toward me. Inside, bank records from an account I'd never seen. Dana's name. A balance of $127,340.56. Where did this come from? I asked. Your niece, Blake said. Megan's internship at the downtown credit union gave her access to some insight. This account was opened 18 months ago. Regular deposits, each one just under $10,000. Just under the reporting threshold. Classic sign of someone trying to hide money. There's more, Blake said, tapping the statement. The deposits line up with your long-haul schedule. Every time you're gone, money goes in. I leaned back in my chair, the realization creeping in like cold air through a crack in the wall. She's been planning this for a year and a half? Blake shook his head slowly. I don't think she was planning to leave you, Cameron. I think she was preparing in case you left her. Why would I leave her? I said, my voice low. I was working myself into the ground to keep us afloat. That's when Blake slid another document across the table. A credit card statement. A hotel charge from Minneapolis, dated 3 months ago. I was in Seattle that week. The reservation? Harold Jensen. Harold. Our neighbor. The same guy who'd sent that text pretending to look out for me. Pretending to be concerned. Blake's face was grim. We think Harold's been involved with Dana for a while. He played the role of friend, while helping her build a false trail to make you suspicious. To cover their tracks. The betrayal wasn't just Dana's. It was a collaboration. Calculated. Quiet. Harold, playing the helpful neighbor while sleeping with my wife. Dana, cleaning out our accounts while I was flatlining on a hospital bed. I stood up. What's our next move? For the first time that day, Blake smiled. That's up to you. But if I were in your boots, I'd make damn sure they both regret ever thinking they could get away with this. The next month, I stayed at Jeff's, focused on healing my body while Blake worked on tearing their lies apart. We had a plan now. Document everything. Build the timeline. Expose Dana and Harold's affair. Prove the financial deceit. Megan became the linchpin. Her role at the credit union gave us a clear view into patterns we wouldn't have caught on our own. Nothing illegal, she said one night. Just connecting dots that are already there. There's another user on the account, she added. Not a joint owner. Just authorized access. Harold? I asked. She nodded. And there's more. They've started moving the money. Small amounts. Scattering it across other accounts. I stared out the window, the night pressing in. They're liquidating, I said. Getting ready to run. That night I called Blake. We need to move faster. I agree, he said. But we need to be smart. One wrong move and they disappear for good. If we tip our hand too soon, they'll disappear with everything, I said. So what do we do? Blake was quiet, calculating. We need leverage. Something that makes them think twice about running. The next day, I drove to the house, timed it so Dana would be at work. I didn't go inside, just walked the property line, snapping photos with my phone. The new shed Harold built last summer. The upscale landscaping that appeared while I was on a 3-week haul through California. Projects I never approved, paid for with my money. Enhancements that boosted the property value of a house now solely in my name. I sent the photos to Blake with a one-word message. Documented. 2 days later, Dana's lawyer called Blake with a surprise offer. She'd return half the withdrawn funds. if we gave her half the house. They're testing us, Blake said when he called. Seeing if we'll settle for cheap. What do we tell them? Nothing yet. Let them sweat. While they waited for a reply, I made my next move. I contacted HR at my trucking company, explained the situation, asked about the disability insurance I'd been paying into for 20 years. You're eligible, the rep told me. 60% of your salary for up to a year, given your cardiac event and medical restrictions. I filed the claim that same day. A new income stream, one Dana didn't know existed. One that wouldn't touch any settlement talks. Not yet. The following week, Jeff drove me past the house again. This time something caught my eye. A for sale sign on Harold's lawn. He's cutting and running, Jeff muttered. I nodded. Call Megan. An hour later, she confirmed it. Harold had emptied his accounts 2 days earlier. Nearly $90,000 pulled in cashier's checks. I called Blake right away. We need to act now. Harold's selling the house. Dana might be going with him. Blake didn't miss a beat. I'll file an emergency injunction first thing in the morning. Freeze everything. No sales. No transfers. Nothing without a judge's say. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Dana. We need to talk. Just you and me. No lawyers. I showed it to Jeff. They're desperate, he said. I nodded. And they should be. Good. I forwarded Dana's message to Blake. He replied almost instantly. Don't respond. Injunction hearing is at 2 p.m. At 1:30, I was walking into the courthouse when I saw them, Dana and Harold, in the parking lot, mid-argument. Sharp gestures, tense voices. They hadn't noticed me. I pulled out my phone. Hit record. 30 seconds. That's all it took to capture what they'd been trying so hard to hide. Their body language told the whole story. Closeness, familiarity, guilt. Evidence they'd both denied under oath. Inside, Blake was waiting by the doors. I showed him the video. Perfect timing, he said. Judge Harmon's already in a mood today. I straightened my tie. Then let's not keep him waiting. Judge Harmon's chambers were tighter than a courtroom, intimate in a way that left no space to hide. Just the judge, both attorneys, Dana, and me. Harold wasn't allowed in. He wasn't part of the divorce. The judge played the video on his monitor. No sound. Just the flicker of truth in motion. When it ended, he turned to Dana's lawyer. Ms. Wells, he said evenly, would you care to explain why your client has sworn under oath that she has no relationship with this neighbor, when video evidence shows otherwise? Wells looked rattled. Your Honor, the nature of their relationship isn't relevant to the financial matters at hand. It is, the judge interrupted. When financial fraud is being alleged. He turned his gaze to Dana, cold, unflinching. Mrs. Doyle, are you planning to leave the state with Mr. Jensen? Dana blanched. I don't. Let me rephrase. The judge continued steely. This court has evidence that you and Mr. Jensen have been moving large sums of money, that Mr. Jensen is liquidating assets, and that you withdrew funds from joint accounts while your husband was incapacitated. That suggests intent to flee and a pattern of deception. He looked from Wells to Blake. Effective immediately, I'm freezing all assets belonging to both Dana Doyle and Harold Jensen. Neither of them may leave the county without court permission. Then he turned to me. Given Mr. Doyle's medical condition and the documented financial exploitation during his incapacity, I'm granting him temporary exclusive use of the marital home. Dana made a small, strangled sound. Your Honor, Wells began, but Judge Harmon raised a hand to silence her. The exploitation of a medically vulnerable spouse is something this court takes very seriously, Counselor. You're both lucky I'm not referring this for criminal charges. For now. Blake gathered the paperwork, trying to hide the satisfaction in his expression. As we left, I glanced back. Dana met my eyes, and for the first time, not anger, not defiance, fear, not of me, of the consequences. 3 months after the heart attack, I moved back into the house. My house now. The divorce wrapped up faster than anyone expected. Dana didn't put up a fight after the injunction hearing. With Harold gone, vanished without a trace. She was left to face the wreckage alone. In the end, the judge awarded me the house, my truck, and 80% of our savings. Dana got her car, and the remaining 20. The secret account was split down the middle, but only after my legal fees came out of her share. We never spoke again. Everything went through the lawyers. Last I heard, she'd moved to Minneapolis. Starting over, maybe. I sold the house 6 months later. Too many ghosts in those walls. Bought a smaller place closer to Jeff and Megan. Used part of the settlement to help Megan with law school. She's gonna make one hell of an attorney. I don't haul freight anymore. Doctor says my heart can't take the stress. These days I work dispatch home every night. It's quieter than the road. But there's peace in that. Stability. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry about what happened. I'm not. Not anymore. You can't control what people do. Only how you respond. Dana thought she was taking everything that day in the hospital. Cleaning out the accounts, walking away like I was already gone. But she didn't break me. She pushed me to fight for myself in a way I never had before. Last week, I found our wedding album in an old box while cleaning. Thought about throwing it out but didn't. Just slid it back in. It's part of the story now. Not the ending, just a chapter. The heart attack nearly killed me. The betrayal almost did the rest. But I'm still here. Different, sure. Stronger, absolutely. Some lessons carve deep. Some people you lose for good reason. And sometimes the life you rebuild ends up better than the one you lost.